Hello, everyone. My name is Brianna. What? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I heard what you were thinking. Yes, I can hear thoughts. Can you imagine? This is an incredible thing, and it happened to me very unexpectedly. As it turned out, in theory, instead of dying, I got this kind of gift. Well, I'll tell you all about it. In the meantime, guys, like the video, immediately subscribe to the channel, and write your opinion under the video. I will be interested in reading them. Let's get started. This happened last year when I was returning home with my little brother Tommy after a walk in the park. I promised him I'd give him a ride on the roller coaster just so he wouldn't shoot me at my parents. Small witnessed how a guy came to me late one night and I pretended to go to bed and I walked with him. So he gave me a condition. Either I take him to the park or he tells my parents everything. Well, in general, I began to save money for his slides. Although, to be honest, we had a fun day. I probably haven't been alone with him for a long time. He usually pisses me off with what he puts up with, but that day was different, and Tommy and I talked a lot. I didn't think we'd have anything to talk about before, but it turned out that there was plenty. I even got to know my brother better. After the walk, tired and satisfied, we decided to go eat. Tommy was hungry and we ate burgers on the way. When we were 3 houses away from the house, a dog we didn't know came running out from behind the bushes. It was huge. I shielded my brother, who immediately threw our food to the dog. The dog attacked the burgers, and while she was eating them, we quickly stepped forward. A moment later, I heard the dog running toward us, foaming at the mouth. She wanted to bite Tommy, but I blocked him. Suddenly, I felt a sharp pain in my leg. The dog bit into my leg right on the hip. I screamed so loud that all the neighbors and even my mother ran out. Seeing the picture threw everyone into shock. My mother immediately rushed to us. She threw a slipper at the dog, but she did not let go. I was screaming in pain, and my brother was shaking all over, but I kept protecting him. Suddenly, a neighbor ran out with a shovel and hit the dog, so he ran away somewhere. Whose dog it was, we still don't know. I was bleeding. The dog had bitten through an important artery, and I was losing blood fast. It's good that the neighbors called an ambulance, which quickly took me away. An urgent transfusion was required. I passed out, and when I came to, it turned out that I had a transfusion. Only one nurse came to see me often. At first, I didn't understand why she was so nervous at the sight of me, and then I accidentally heard that she had transfused me with the wrong blood type. Against the background of unfamiliar antigens, I became ill the very next day. I had a fever and couldn't get up. It was so bad. I couldn't even tell my mom because I couldn't open my mouth. I cursed the nurse in my head. She, by the way, ran away from work, somewhere unknown, just like that dog. Surprisingly, on the 3rd day, I became much better. I even remember how a boy flew into my room. He brought me my favorite French fries and iced tea. I knew how much he also adored potatoes, and the fact that he brought them safely only for me, I was very pleased. Tommy was sorry it had happened, but I wasn't. How could I have done anything else? He's my little brother. Tommy leaned into me and rested his head on my stomach. A few minutes later, I heard his faint sobs. "I could have lost you. You almost died because of me," he said. "Don't ever say that again, Tommy. I wouldn't die for you," I told him, and he slowly raised his head and stared at me with round eyes. "I didn't say anything," he said to me timidly. "I was just thinking about it." At that moment, a slight chill passed over my skin, and I suddenly began to panic a little, just like Tommy himself. He looked at me as if I were an alien, and I put it all down to an accident, saying that I just blurted it out at random. He pretended to calm down, but the feeling of unease remained. When Tommy went home, I was still thinking about the situation. Confident that I wasn't crazy because I could clearly hear these sentences in his voice, I decided to test the theory and went down to the cafeteria. There were a lot of people there, and everyone was busy either eating or thinking, just what I needed. I helped myself to tea and lunch and sat down at the furthest table. I looked at the people around me, but I didn't understand or hear anything. At some point, I even thought that I really just imagined it. I finished my meal and went back to the room. Just then, my doctor came. He told me that my condition had improved dramatically, and this is extremely rare. We chatted, and the doctor started to leave. Finally, he suddenly said that I was very beautiful. I was embarrassed. Doc himself was a young guy, and he was very good-looking. At that moment, I was sure he hadn't said it out loud. I suddenly wanted to ask again, but I didn't. I decided to give myself time to sort myself out a bit. As a result, I arrived home a few days later. My life was back on track, but my abilities were also back on track. A couple of days after I was discharged, I heard my mother talking to someone on the phone. She was swearing loudly, but then I walked past her and saw her sitting at the table with her head down. My mother's hands fiddled with a glass of water, and I said clearly, "I'm not going to let this stuff ruin our business. I'll do my best. So first of all, I will tell Frank. This is my father." Then she grabbed the phone and dialed Dad. I could see that my mother's lips didn't move, but I could hear her words. Yes, it was still creepy and scary, but I did not react as much as before. Then I started listening to my brother, my father, and my mother again. I did not always succeed, but I kind of trained myself, and over time, I learned to hear not only relatives, but even neighbors. I guess you could call my gift psychic or something. Do not consider it stupid or fictional, because everything can happen in this world. I do not know how much longer I will have this gift, but while I have it, I am considering how to use it correctly and best.
Hi everyone, my name is Duke. Just recently, I literally back from the dead. You know, no one expected or believed, except for one person. Now I'll tell you who it is and how it all happened. I hope you enjoy my story, but first, I'm waiting for your likes, comments under the video at the end of viewing, and please do not forget to subscribe to the channel. I grew up in a rich family. I had everything that my age guys can only dream of. I got my first car worth an apartment, and that's not all. Yes, my parents are fabulously rich. They have several businesses, and they have 2 kids who are like me. Besides me, by the way, there is a daughter. My sister's name is Dakey. Do you want to know what it is? In short, she's a bitch. Dakey also loved not only expensive things, but also people. In short, she did not communicate with poor people. She was not the kind of friend who would comfort you when you were in a bad way, or help you in a difficult moment. She did not show her emotions to anyone, but she did not perceive other people's emotions either. As for me, I was a little bit different. Yes, I was like a kinder side, more understanding, although I was also considered a star, and brash, and a bully. At least my friends liked me better, I knew that, than my friends' girlfriends. Our parents are very busy people. They are almost never in our mansion. Fortunately, we have a lot of servants, and we do not do any chores around the house at all. Our mother owned a whole chain of luxury clothing stores, and she constantly flew somewhere to bring clothes from abroad. My mother wasn't very sentimental either, but my sister took after her, and I, as you may have guessed, look more like my father. Funny and interesting, but the men in our house have a bigger heart than the women's have. When I was a child, someone hurt my sister or me. We ran to my mother to complain, and I got even more from her for allowing such an attitude to myself, and another slap for not being able to solve the problem on my own. It was pretty cruel, but we quickly learned not to tell her anything else, not to complain, and generally to pretend that nothing was happening. But with Dad, it was completely different. Dad felt sorry for us, he kissed Dakey, and hugged me. Dad knew how to choose the right words and support in a real, fatherly way. In general, we had enough love, so we grew up until we were all grown up. So, one day, I came home drunk enough, I just felt bad. To be honest, I could barely stand on my feet and miraculously got home by car. As soon as I fell into the room and lay down on the bed, my sister called me. For some reason, she was crying and asking for help. I immediately seemed to sober up. I was afraid for her. She asked me to come, and of course, I left immediately. I don't remember exactly how fast I was going, but I was going fast. I remember how I almost got there, how I picked up the phone to check the address with the neighbors. As soon as I unlocked my phone, I saw that some guys and Dakey were standing by the road. She was crying. Out of anger, I wanted to run over them. I drove even more and lost control. The car overturned and crashed into a tree. I remember opening my eyes, hearing my sister's voice calling for help, and then I had a dream. I dreamed a lot of things, including the moment of the accident. I was trying to avenge my sister. Dickie was crying all the time. I could clearly hear her voice in my sleep. She was asking for forgiveness, and it was so sad. I heard my father's voice, my friend's voice, and then I heard my mother come to me. I also thought that the pancake is going to hit me even more. And the most amazing thing is that I heard her crying. Can you imagine how surprised I was when I first heard her cry? I was used to the fact that my mother's reputation as an iron lady, and it was like this at work, stone as a rock. I heard it many times, and then thought I heard strange voices. I didn't know them. I didn't really understand the speech of strangers, but I still had a dream. It was so long. And then one day, when I'd had a good sleep, I heard my mother crying again, and she was crying as hard as she'd ever cried before. She asked me to come home. I was surprised, because did I sleep somewhere outside the house? I opened my eyes, saw a bright light, and my eyes hurt. I wanted to ask them to close the windows, but I suddenly realized that I couldn't speak because I had something in my mouth. I took a deep breath through my nose and started coughing. At this moment, my mother screamed like a madman. She flew up to me and started shouting my name. Then she ran around the room and shouted someone's last name. Immediately a man came running. He pulled all the excess out of my mouth, believed the vital signs, shone flashlights in my eyes, felt my hands, and asked me to tell my name. I answered all the questions and then asked what was going on. My mother came up to me again, and I saw a very old woman instead. Her hair was almost gray, bags under her eyes. She had lost so much weight. I said, "Mom," and she rushed back to me. She was crying and happy, and I couldn't understand what was going on. Finally, after some time, a stranger came up to me again, and he told me that I had an accident while driving for my sister. I lost control of the car and it rolled over. I ended up with a head injury and went into a coma. "You were in a coma for 10 years, the doctor said. The words hit me like an arrow, and I was scared and panicked. I was in a coma? Why 10 years? Have I lost so much time? I asked myself. I was released from the hospital not immediately, only a week later. The news about me spread around the city, but my mother decided not to accept anyone from the guests yet. I saw my father. My sister begged for forgiveness. As it turned out, I had not dreamed it before. I heard it all. I calmed her down because I really didn't hold a grudge against her. A couple of days later, we went out for a walk and talked about a lot. I noticed that it wasn't just my mother who had changed. Dickie also became more human and sentimental. She told me that on the day I woke up, the doctors had already suggested that my mother turn off the machine that I was using to breathe, because I couldn't do it on my own. Parents' permission was required. My father was ready to sign the paper because he couldn't torment me anymore, but my mother, she didn't agree. She believed in me and shouted that even if I lay in this state for another 30 years, she would agree. Just then, I opened my eyes. You know, it was a real miracle. There are probably 1 in a million cases like me. Despite the fact that I missed so much in life, I now have the opportunity to make up for everything. Plus, the whole situation is that I got to know my mother and sister from the other side, and my mother's love and faith in me did not allow me to die. And this is magical.